Hi everyone, my name is Nareeman. I'm a Black Pearl section editor. I work with Levant X, and basically we try to amplify Black voices from the or African descendant people voices from across the Swana region. I'm really happy to be here today because I wanted to discuss an important topic not only for myself but for my guest as well. It's basically about preserving our indigenous languages or local languages in our countries. So I'm from Sudan. I'm also from Darfur, which is in Western Sudan, from Zaghawa tribe. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, especially in the last probably 2 years, because I started looking into my family heritage and background and history. So that's why I wanted to speak to Rami. He's been active across in social media, especially on Twitter, talking about his heritage background. So I'm gonna leave this to you, Rami. If you can introduce yourself first or to our audience, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, thank you so much, Nariman. Really appreciate the work you're doing. It is very much needed. My name is Ramey Dawoud. I'm based in the US. I am Nubian from the far north of Sudan. My family comes from a town called Wadi Halfa, very far north of Sudan on the border with Egypt. Um, I'm a musician, a rapper. I also do some acting every now and then. And I'm just someone who was very passionate about Africa, about Nubia, about our history and our culture.
Irnaisi, Irnaisi, Ir, Irbimi, Ir, Irbimi, Irsidoya, Meno, Irminga, Kunkeno, Mingo Kago, Naringo Minga, Benyi Keno, Mawaktika Hika, Naigai.
I grew up actually, my early childhood, I spent it in Egypt. I was born there and I spent my early childhood in Egypt in Alexandria. And I grew up around my grandmother who is fluent in Nubian. In fact, her Arabic is very limited. She learned Arabic after spending time in Egypt and away from the Nubian land, from her homeland. That's when she learned Arabic, but her first language has always been Nubian. And so I grew up around her. I grew up speaking Arabic, going to school in Egypt and such. I didn't get to speak Nubian, and so I'm still not fluent 100% till this day. I'm still in the process of learning, and so growing up around my grandmother speaking Nubian, I would hear stories about her talking about the old land in Wadi Halfa before the flood, before the displacement and such. And as a child, those stories get ingrained in your head, and as I grew up and came to the U.S. And now I had access to like the internet and books and such later on in my life, and I started reading about the kingdoms in ancient Nubia and all these amazing stories that I never knew about when I was a child. And so now there was all these different stories, and I just wanted to share them to the rest of the world. I wanted to tell people about where we come from. I wanted not just non-Sudanese, but Sudanese people as well. There's a lot of us that don't really know our history. We lack that knowledge because we haven't been taught it properly for one reason or the other. But I would say like when I was in high school is when I really started chasing after this knowledge and reading and making songs about it. I was about like 15 or 16 at that age.
2 years ago, I tried to speak with my grandma, and I was just like, I was really sad because I couldn't even, I only spoke to her for like about 30 seconds because it was like, hi, how are you? I'm good and good. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. And that's what's about it. She would ask me questions, but like I couldn't. I would try to explain in basic, like in simple Arabic, but still she wouldn't really understand much. That's not to say that she doesn't obviously speak Arabic, but she's more comfortable with Beria or Zagawa, and that what got me like asking questions like why didn't my parents, for example, my dad, teach us Zagawa?
Yeah. It's a common like your story is common amongst a lot of people who kind of come across a period in their life when they're like, you know what, I want to learn about my origins and I want to. Why is this dying out? Why is this not common? A lot of it has to do with colonization. Now, one thing I like to always say is that it's important to know the roots of our problem, but it's up to us to fix those problems. And so colonization played a big role in it, but I feel like now it's up to us to fix that problem. No one is going to come and save us, or no one is going to come and revive our languages. It has to. We can always get help from scholars outside. They're more than welcome, but the narrative has to be controlled by us. It has to start by us. We have to come together and unite and start some kind of organizational work to make these languages, bring them back to life. And it's never too late.
It's interesting that you mentioned the colonization, because a lot of people talk about colonization and the British, etc., but they don't really talk about the Arab conquest, which in turn basically made Arabic our official or national language. So I was a while ago, I was talking to my father, and he basically told me that they were forced to learn Arabic in school. The teacher will give them a chain, and if anyone speaks Arabic, they will be beaten basically next day. And it wasn't long time ago. It was like around like 50s and 60s. So it's not really that long ago. And in Darfur, it's not the only one. I spoke to someone else who's, I think she's from northern Sudan, and she said her father went through the same experience as well.
Oh,
Like,
definitely. Even like my mom's like classmates during her generation, when they went to school, they would even beat them in school for speaking their native language. So it's common across Sudan. And one thing about the whole word Rutana, for example, a lot of people don't understand the word literally means like gibberish. So when they call people Ratanes, they calling us people that speak gibberish. We're not really speaking, you know. So it's a way of dehumanizing us in a way. You're less than us. You're not fully. You're not really a full human being if you don't speak Arabic, or if you don't speak English, or some kind of language that is deemed is prestige. Right? Your language is not really a real language. You're like almost like animal like is another way that it's just a nicer way of saying that. Um, so I have an issue with that, you know, and I correct even my own family members when they use that word to describe our language, because of ignorance. A lot of people are not aware. You know, I gotta understand, our grandparents and such, their generation, they grew up hearing this, and it's just what they have learned. So they have taken the words of their conquerors and they started using it amongst themselves to describe themselves. But there's nothing to be proud of calling yourself Faratani or this. We have languages. And another thing, in Sudan, you hear people referring to languages as lahajat, or dialects. These are not dialects, these are languages, right? And the language does not have to be written. It doesn't have to have an alphabet for it to be classified as a language. Um, uh, Zagawa is a language. Dinka is a language. Nubian is a family of multiple languages. Bidawit and the Bidja people speak. That's a language. These are all languages, and they're beautiful languages, and they're ancient. And so we should start by educating ourselves and our classmates about the fact that these are languages and we should be proud of them, and they're not just some dialects, and they're not gibberish.
what do you think are the main issues that we have currently in terms of reviving or preserving those languages?
Um, Access. A lot of people lack the access into um, like Sudan lacks infrastructure, and in order to begin even learning a language, the best way is to live amongst the people that speak it, right? And you know, we fly into Khartoum, and it's very difficult to go anywhere else in Sudan,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's no, the highway system is lacking. To get a flight to go to Darfur, to go to the Nuba Mountains or elsewhere, it's very difficult to do that. And so it's not just the passion is there. The people, there's communities out there that want to do this. They want to revive these languages and learn, but having access to even begin doing that work is very difficult at the moment. And I feel like one of the jobs for the new government, if it ever comes to be, we're kind of in limbo right now. But if there is ever a new government in the near future, they should really work on the infrastructure and allow people to travel, because prejudice comes from really not knowing each other. The different ethnic groups in Sudan don't really know each other because we haven't lived amongst each other. We don't really understand each other's traditions and customs. And so we begin having racist and prejudiced views
Mm-hmm.
about one another. Oh, these people from Al Gharib, they do this. That's a Shemal, whatever. That's from the East. They, you know what I mean? We begin having these views on each other. And I feel like a lot of that can be solved by sitting down and learning from one another.
What do you think we can do as, as people who are passionate about reviving or protecting those languages?
Yeah, for example, I'm currently writing a children's book. It's going to be a series of books based on like the same few characters, like talking about using the numbers, for example, 1 to 10 in a sentence. Like so and so has one pet goat, or there's two palm trees next to that. Like, there's children's book, easy way to learn very simple
Mhm.
stuff. I feel like aiming it at the youth is a must. It is a must because their brains are still developing. They are more than capable of taking in multiple languages and learning. There's so much out there that they're inquisitive. They want to learn, right? They like to touch things. And so reading and aiming it towards children is very important. Another thing is just using the arts in general. Sometimes I use Nubian in my songs, even though my Nubian itself is limited. I go to my mom and I get her help. What does this mean? And I use it in my songs. Um, I've even had the idea of making like a children's cartoon, like an animated show for kids in the Nubian language, and I don't see why this cannot be applied towards other languages in Sudan. I've worked with people, not organizations, but specific people in Sudan that have the same passion or the same views, maybe, or the same goals in reviving these languages. Again, it's difficult not being there, being in the U.S. and communicating, and it's difficult to really make things happen. But the effort is there, and we've tried, and we'll continue trying. And not just in Sudan. There's people in Europe and just all over the world, because we need as much help as possible. It's a difficult job in reviving a language, and I believe everyone can do their part in whatever your expertise is. And another thing I want to touch on is we have to try to modernize it to make it attractive to the
Mm.
youth, the young people there, whether it be through music or books or whatever it may be, even comic books. I know there's someone out there I came across on Twitter that has a comic book series about like Sudanese folktale, where there's like habobat, stories that they
So,
tell. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do in a modern way and to present it to the world.
is there anything else that you think we need to focus on?
I don't think we should spend our time trying to convince other people um, of who we are. We know who we are, and we know the importance of these languages and our identity, because like you said, when these languages die out, it's not just words that die out. These are stories, right? These are stories of who we are, our origins, how we came to be, where did we come from, and how we settled in the areas we settled. Now, there's stories that will die forever, and our part of our identity will die with it. And so I don't spend time trying to convince people of my Africanness or of my Nubianness or why my people are important. So I think we should focus on those who want to help us, those who are interested in helping and working with us, and organizing with them. If someone is offended by that, that's their problem to solve. It is not our problem. Our problem is reviving our languages and strengthening our identity and our culture and who we are, telling our stories through us, not having someone else tell our stories for us. We control that narrative. So we work together, like people like you and I and whoever else that's out there that's interesting. We come together, we organize, and we put in the work.